Hi, this is Kerry with Filmmaker Central once again, and today I've got a tutorial for you that's going to use Davinci Resolve Fusion. And let me show you what the effect is first. And this is basically a Facebook page here. This is how it's going to look when it's all finished. And I saw this on someone else's ad, and I thought, oh, this would be a really cool thing to show people. So let's take a look at what it looks like. So it looks like some image going over two different posts. And so it has a kind of cool effect that can really pop out when people view this on Facebook. So we'll go into how to create it, how to export it, and all that when we come right back. Okay, let's get into the meat of this thing. And what we're going to do is first we have a graphic. And this is what the graphic looks like. There's two images on, or an image on top, an image on bottom, and then two white lines, the Facebook profile picture, and it just says something like Facebook Central has shared an image, or whatever you want that text to say. I did this in Arial, and it seems to match the Facebook font pretty well. So there's no top or bottom to it. Let me zoom out so you can see that's all there is to it. And this is let's double check. I'm going to go to the media page and we'll just go to this graphic here and we'll double check that it is 1000 by 1000. So it's a square image and we'll get to it. So, all right, that's what we're going to start with. So you need to create this 1000 by 1000 pixel image first. And it doesn't matter where you put these lines. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. Just create something like this. Here, I'll go full screen so you can see it. Just a picture on top, picture on bottom, and then I just basically did a screen capture from Facebook to make sure I had this looking with the right colors and effects on here. Okay, once we have that, then we need the object that we're going to put on top of it. Here, I just have this transparent PNG of a Sony a7 III. So again, you can use anything you want. It needs to have a transparent background. So it should be a PNG with transparency. Okay, we're going to go to the edit page and I'm going to go to effects, fusion composition, and drop this guy in here. Should note, before we did this, we created a project Now I should note that when we created this timeline, I do need to make sure that we start off this project right. And when I created this timeline, let me go into my timeline settings here. I created it at 1000 by 1000 to match that image. Now you cannot do this in older versions of Davinci Resolve. You need to be in 16 or newer, and you would go new timeline, use custom settings, this button down here, go to format, and just change this to 1000 by 1000. So that's what you need to do to get the timeline set up properly. So make sure you do that first. All right, so we've got our 1000 by 1000 timeline. We have our object that we're going to animate. We have our background, image, and we're just going to go into Fusion after we put the Fusion composition on the timeline. So give it a second here. All right, so we've got our media out, which is where we're going to end up with. I'm going to turn on the media pool, and I'm going to drop in the background. So I'll go F2, and we'll call this the background. And then we'll take the camera, I'll drop that in, and I'll hit F2, and I'll call this camera. All right, and it does help to do this to make sure that you're not mixing and matching and putting things in the wrong order. So definitely, I always recommend naming those nodes so they make more sense. All right, and we'll put the camera on top of the background because that's where it's going to belong. And we need to merge these two. So just going to drag one from the other and hit 2 to put that in our timeline over here. And sure enough, we have the camera on top of the background. So far, so good. Now, the camera, we need to size and animate. So for that, I'm going to click on the camera node here and hit Shift Space and add a transform node. All right. So now we have the ability to modify it, right? So on this transform node, I'm going to take the size and scale it down to something appropriate. And I'm going to select a starting position. So I'm just going to move this guy up here. And I think something else I want to do, well, let's actually move to the first frame. So definitely make sure you're on your starting frame before you get started here. And I'm going to hit Shift Space, and I'm going to do a drop shadow. That way we have a nice little drop shadow. Let's put it over the white so we can see it a little clearer, so you can see the effect there. Okay, little drop shadow. If you want a little bit more, we can add more drop shadow to it. So I'll click on the drop shadow, and maybe I'll give it a little bit more distance. You can add more or less blur to it. You can change the angle, shadow strength. I just want a fairly light one. Okay, nothing too fancy. And I'll go ahead and zoom out a little bit. I'm going to go to single frame here, get rid of my media pool, scroll this down some so we can have more room to work. Zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to make sure I take my merge and put it on my media out just so I don't forget that at the end. Okay, so all the movement here is going to be controlled by the transform. So let's get it back into our starting position. And we have our center and our angle. Make sure we have the transform node selected, and we have our center and our angle. Those are the ones that we're going to play with. So first off, I'm going to start by setting a keyframe on my position and my angle. Okay, nothing too crazy here. Now look, I'm working with 119 frames. So just shy of 5 seconds, about 4.5 seconds. So give me a little bit of time to work here. So I think what I do is I'm going to put my playhead somewhere in the middle. That way I kind of know, as I try and animate different pieces to it, I kind of already have kind of a goal in mind, I guess is the way to put it, right? So if I have my starting point at the beginning, and I'm going to go to, let's see, what do we have? 120 frames, so we'll go like 60 frames. That'll be our middle point. And I'm going to just move this down to where I want it to be at the middle point. Okay, so far so good. Make sure I have a keyframe on the angle. Now I'm going to kind of cut this in half. And for me, this is a way I learned about keyframing, is you don't need to do a ton of keyframes generally. You kind of start it at the beginning, go to the end, cut it in half, cut that in half, and you keep getting finer and finer until you have exactly what you want. So here, kind of in the middle of here, I'm going to change the angle on this so the body kind of falls first. Okay, now that is going to give me some in-betweening already. So let's look at what happens here. The camera starts to fall. As it starts to get to the bottom, it's going to flatten back out again. Okay, not too shabby. And then we're going to go to the end frame, and just to make this simple, I'm going to basically go back to the starting point. So I might move it back up to here, and then cut that in half, and I'll angle it down the other way so the body's pulling it up. Okay, so I really only have 1, 2, 3, 4 keyframes for this whole animation. Let's take a look at it. So it's going to pop down, it's going to slide back up, and we'll just watch it loop here, make sure it all looks pretty good. Okay, great. So we're most of the way there. The problem is, as it's going up, we want it to go behind this, the white section here, so that it looks like it goes behind it. So the way we need to do that is with a mask. So I'm going to come down below my merge here and shift space. I'm going to add a rectangle. That's going to put this rectangle in place here, and I'm just going to draw it out so it's in the right spot. Let's zoom in so we can see what we're working with. So pretty obvious I didn't have it exactly centered with the bars there, but that's okay, that'll work. Okay, so now we have our rectangle, and now we need to make it a mask. What am I masking? All right, I have this merge node, which is putting that camera on as the foreground and the background as the background. And so what I want to do is mask out a part of the background so the foreground doesn't appear there. Hopefully that makes sense, but let's just show you how it works, right? So I've got the rectangle defined on here, and I'm going to take this rectangle and connect it to the merge node. Now that we have the rectangle connected to the merge node, we have the mask created, but we still need to do some little tricks to turn the mask on and off so that the camera at the beginning is in front of the white lines, and then on the upswing it's behind it. So let's just watch again. So it's in front, no problem there, not a big deal, but it's because this solid is not checked. So if I come back up a little bit and I click on solid, you see that the mask is now solid, and therefore it hides that camera. So once the object moves out of that area, well, I need to make sure I keyframe this, right? So I want to make sure during that whole first part, it's not turned on. Then we just need to go another frame, turn it on, it creates another keyframe, and ding, it comes up behind it. So all this magic is done with 2 keyframes, just one to make sure that the box is not solid at the beginning, and another to make sure that the mask is solid. So let's double check everything. It falls in front, the mask turns on, the object slides up behind it, and then it loops. Well, it's looping because I'm in Fusion, but when you put this on Facebook, it'll actually loop when someone views it, which is kind of cool. So very stunning. So now we'll just go to our edit page and go to our deliver options, and I've got a couple Fusion compositions on this timeline, so I'll just make an in and out here, and we'll call this Facebook ad, and we're going to just double check a couple settings. We want H.264, which is fine. We want to make sure that our resolution is on 1000 by 1000, and really just the default options should all be good. I'll get rid of these renders, and I'll just say add to the render queue. And that is all there is to it. So let's bring up a Finder window here. I'll go to the desktop, find the new video, and we'll just play it from here. Okay, so one thing is it hits that bottom, and let's kind of scrub through this. So it starts to, when it starts to do that fall, I just don't like that it's kind of sharp and then it just hits the bottom and rebounds. I just want to smooth those out. So I'm going to add one more feature to this. So I'm going to go back to Fusion, and we're going to bring up the spline tool. And I want to make sure I'm on that transform. That's the one we're going to mess with. So let me open up the spline here, turn on the transform, scale things down so we can see everything on the screen here. So there's our angle and the position. So all I'm going to do is grab a box around those, come over here to the first icon that says smooth, and just tap on that. So now let's see, well, I'm going to let it render here first so that it'll play back nice and smooth. So this shouldn't take too long. It's not that complicated of a scene, and this is an old MacBook Pro, and you can see it's going to do this pretty quick here. All right, now let's play that. So it just kind of smoothed out the animation there. Yeah, much better. So export that, and you're ready to go and upload it to Facebook. I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was pretty cool myself. When I first saw it, I thought, wow, that looks really neat. I should replicate that. So I did for you. Hopefully you like that. If you did, let me know in the comments. If you do something for your own website that uses this technique, post a link to it so we can see what you did. I think it'd be kind of cool to see what other people are doing with it. So thanks for watching, everybody. Like, share, subscribe. Check that bell icon to be notified whenever there's a new video. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Kerry with Filmmaker Central. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.